Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. This is a great podcast with LT really going through his life story and his career. A lot of great lessons in this podcast. Unfortunately, for some reason, about the first 5 minutes, there was some kind of error with the SD card on my audio recorder. So there's some parts of the first few minutes of the podcast that kind of skip like a CD. I please ask you to bear with me. I didn't want to cut anything out because of how valuable I believe this podcast is. But once we kind of get into the meat of the discussion, the error kind of goes away. It's honestly just within like the first 4 or 5 minutes where the error is happening. So I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast as much as I did recording it. And again, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. All right, sir. So again, thank you for taking the time to do this podcast. Like I said, I love documenting people's stories, so that's just kind of my whole idea behind this podcast. You know, I kind of have a slight agenda, just kind of go through your career and kind of take stems off of that.
Yeah.
But again, it's just kind of documenting your story and putting it out there because I think it's a story that deserves to be heard.
Thank you.
All right?
I appreciate that. Yeah.
So as in the Navy, anytime, right, to make sure we know what we need to do on that watch. But before we start the mid-watch podcast, we do the 11 general questions.
Right.
All right, just kind of get the mind going before we kick off the conversation. All right, sir, your favorite superhero?
Batman.
All right. Who would win in a cage fight, Chuck Norris or Bruce Lee?
Bruce Lee all day.
Them and Bruce Lee. World, who would it be?
Abraham Lincoln.
All right. If you could have dinner with one person, dead or alive, who would it be?
My grandfather.
Grandfather? What was your first car ever?
1983 Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme.
If you could be any movie character in real life, who would it be? Awesome, good pick. I was actually just talking about Ace Ventura with a couple of my teammates before I came over here. Favorite chick flick?
The Notebook.
All right. Pick one: honor, courage, or commitment.
Honor.
Okay. If all the jobs paid the same, what would you do?
A forensic biologist or a forensic detective.
Where you were in the airport and they said we can give you one free ticket to go anywhere, where would it be?
I would have to say Europe.
Item on your bucket list.
I'd say to go back to Lebanon, where my family is originated from, where my wife's family is from, is the Philippines. So one of those two places for sure.
Okay. All right, sir. So one of the questions I always start the podcast, just to kind of give us a starting point, is I'm sitting next to you, senior year of high school in math class. Who are you?
Well, first of all, I probably wouldn't be there.
Okay.
Because the kid that I was in high school, I was that dumbass that just didn't take it seriously. You know, I had a lot of personal issues that were happening in the house, and it affected me in my professional. And I'd say at that time, high school, I was that kid that just didn't pay attention.
Okay. Did you play any sports or anything like that, or just kind of?
Yeah, I just played football. My senior year, though, I had torn my ACL, so I missed out on most of the season.
Okay.
I did a little bit of powerlifting, some track, and mostly it was just out of competition and comparison, trying to keep up with the Joneses or that.
Okay, not too far from home. Very cool.
Yeah.
So what was the transition from high school to the Navy? Was there college in between? Was there work and?
Yeah. It's funny you ask because, when I graduated high school, I kind of thought I achieved something. I got a 1.8 GPA. I think they passed me just to get me the hell out of there. And when I graduated, I remember we had a little graduation get-together, me and my friends. And, my mom, she was married to an alcoholic. My dad is a drug addict, and he left when I was 2. My mom remarried when I was about 12. This time, not a drug addict, but an alcoholic. And he struggled with alcoholism. And when I graduated high school, we had a little get-together, and he got drunk and punched me in the face. And shortly after high school, I left home. That was kind of the last straw. And I was homeless for about a year and a half.
Wow. So, that's obviously a very, traumatic thing, and probably set the foundation for a lot of your adult life as far as how you conduct yourself and as a father, stuff like that. What was going through your mind at that time that you were homeless? What was kind of, did you have a game plan? Like, what was kind of, your mental status and stuff like that at that point?
Yeah, looking back on it, it was a dark time in my life. It was a lot of unknowns. You know, as we know in the military, our biggest fear is the unknown. And as a young man, that takes a toll on your identity, kind of who you are, your courage, your confidence, your character. And for me, I didn't have a plan. I also think about, you know, Mike Tyson. He says everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Right.
And I literally got punched in the mouth, and I didn't have no plan. Life really went dark for me, and you hit it on the head. You know, that set the trajectory for kind of my adult life. And you know, I was bouncing from couch to couch, and I remember seeing my friends kind of figuring out where they're going to go to college, and I was over here trying to figure out where I was going to get my next meal.
Right.
And it was, I would say, if I had to put it in 3 words, it was really fear. It was, you know, I felt really at rock bottom. And the beautiful thing about rock bottom, though, is that it's a solid foundation to build a legacy.
Right. It's the only way you can go up is up, right? When you're
Yeah,
at
it can't
that
get no
point.
worse than this.
Right. So what drove you? Did you essentially go from that situation right into the military, and what drove you to make that happen?
Yeah, it was about 1.5 years, and you know, I was working some dead end jobs. You know, I was working at a lumber yard, and I'll tell you, man, in the Texas heat, picking up bags of concrete, you know, treated lumber, it's hot.
I can only imagine.
And people are like, "Hey, put this shit this way and put it that way," and no, and I'm like, dude, like, I'm wearing steel-toe boots, jeans, long sleeve shirt, and I'm burning up. And when I would leave the lumber yard, I would work odd jobs, and he was. We were building fences, baling hay, you know, really laborious, you know, intensive kind of critique our work and tell us, you know, all right, tomorrow here's the agenda. And one day he said, "What are you going to do with your life?" You know, this is about 1 year in that I'm sleeping on a friend's couch, and you know, I did like everybody else does. You know, oh, I'm going to go to school. I'm going to go do this. There was no action behind it. There was no plan. And when he said that, "What are you going to do with your life?" And I made some, you know, BS excuse up, told him something he wanted to hear. I remember going back to my friend's house, and you know, we do what we always did. We just go grab a 6-pack or a 12-pack and go have a drink and just, you know, wash away the shit from the day. But those words set with me. You know, what are you going to do with your life? And that was kind of, you know, the words I needed to hear to get my brain kind of turning. Okay, what are you going to do? If I remember just waking up one day and like, I got to do something. And so I remember the recruiters that came to my school when I was in senior class. One of the classes they had the recruiters come in, and I remember looking at those guys and laughing like, man, look at them, they're wearing their whites, they look like idiots, you know, like what are they going to teach me?
Right.
And I did the walk of shame, went over there to the recruiter's office, same guys, and said, "Hey, I want to join." And they looked at me. I remember you're that kid in the back that wasn't paying attention and making jokes and all that. And I was like, I need to get out. They gave me the opportunity to join the military.
It's cool. Like I'm sure looking back at it, maybe even like as you're having that conversation with the rancher, that, like, you know, those few words maybe at the time didn't seem like anything, but you know, you can look back on it and it's like that specific conversation with that specific person is kind of, you know, what changed everything for me.
Yeah, you know, they often say that, you know, the quality of our life is dependent on the quality of questions that we ask ourselves, and sometimes as a leader, now that I look back on it, it's often those questions that we're asked
that
get us saying, maybe there's more than what we're currently doing.
Right.
Maybe but in 2019, you know, by 2019, I've been in the military now for 15 years, you know, commissioned officer and everything. But I got a phone call when I got back from my last deployment from my high school, from the educator that was in charge of the whole district. And they said, "Hey, Mr. WAITE, we've selected you as distinguished alumni for your graduating class." I was only one
awesome.
of 2.
Oh, wow.
You know, when you looked at the yearbook, I wasn't the guy that's most likely to succeed.
Right.
I don't even think I had a yearbook picture because I didn't even show up for that. Shit, I wouldn't even show up to my own funeral. But I was like, you know, maybe you got the wrong person at school. And I was like, "You sure you got the right person?" It was not my sister. And like, "No, class of 2003, you were selected." Because
wow.
We've been following you, and we've seen the work that you've done, the humanitarian work you've done overseas, and, you know, all the stuff you've been doing in the military. And we'd like to recognize you as a distinguished alumni.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so, yeah, I got to go back and walk the halls of that school, and my mug's on the wall for the rest of eternity.
That's very cool. Yeah, we'll definitely get to there down the road. I'd love to ask you more about that. But did you have any idea of what the Navy was, what a rate was?
Not at all.
How did that conversation go?
Yeah, not at all. It's funny because I was there for about an hour. I was standing outside. I went to the Marine Corps recruiter at first because, you know, obviously they do the best recruiting.
Right. Yeah.
I was like, if I'm going to be somebody, I want to be one of those guys.
Right.
And so I sat out there because they were out to lunch or doing probably PT. Who knows what the hell they were doing? But it was an hour, and I was like, dude, okay, enough of this. So I walked into the Navy, and You know, you see all the pictures of the Navy SEALs on the wall and all the, you know, rescue swimmer, all the cool jobs.
Right.
Of course, I didn't qualify. My ass man was that I had no idea. And they gave me the job of aviation support. They made it sound really cool. You get to weld, and you'll learn like all these skills. You'll be working on the jets and fueling the jets. I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Right.
So I signed up in a delayed entry program, and I was aviation support. I still got my little ID that said aviation support. But the problem was that I wasn't leaving for 6 months. And I told them, dude, I don't got 6 months. You know, my friends are on dead or on drugs or in prison, and that's my trajectory. If I don't get out of here soon, then I'll probably end up like that. And so I went home. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't go home. I didn't have a home to go to. But I left. And they called me back the next day. This was on a Monday. They said, hey, we got medical opened up. Are you interested? I'm like, hell yeah. Like, you leave Friday. So like 3 days. I went in there, signed up, and off I went Friday. So 4 days I was gone.
Wow. I mean, kind of fast forwarding back to that time. I mean, 2003, you know, at that point, Afghanistan went on for a few years, and that 2003 is when we went into Iraq.
Yeah.
Was that on your mind at all?
No, I had no idea. No idea of what we were getting into. I had no idea like where we were as a country. You know, I didn't. My only instinct at that moment was survival. You know,
Gotcha.
I got to figure out where I'm going to eat. I got to figure out if I'm going to make any money. Like, I got to figure out what's next. And so I had no idea on political views or what was going on in the world. But, you know, out of desperation, I think comes a desire. And in that moment, if I look back on it, you know, I was tired of struggling. And I knew that I had to change something. And I decided in that moment, like, I got to give this life up of struggle and take on one of service. So I was willing to do anything.
Okay, so you get to boot camp. You're still in Houston, I'm assuming, or Houston area, right?
Yep.
So you fly up to Great Lakes?
Yep.
Okay.
Great Lake.
What was your initial, right, the iconic getting, you know, off the bus, right, you know, line up on that tow line, make your, you know, your last phone call, that whole initial into boot camp. What was your mindset then? Were you, you know, I finally made it out of Houston, here I am doing something, or were you, you know, what the fuck did I just do? Like,
yeah, all the yelling and stuff. I was used to that. That was growing up, you know, the abuse and neglect and struggle, you know. And I looked around at all the kids that were there, and I remember this kid. We were sitting in line in our Smurfs, you know, the old PT gear, and we're sitting there. And they keep you up all night that first night, right? And they're just trying to break you down mentally.
Right.
And I was sitting there, and I was just like, you know, I've been through worse. I know what it's like to struggle. And my goal was, I'm getting through. I have no options. This is it.
Right.
This is my second chance, and if I don't get through this, then there's no hope for me.
Right.
And I remember this kid sitting there, and he started, and you know, this chief was walking up and down the line, and we were waiting to get our uniforms given to us. So we're sitting outside, and this chief's walking back and forth, and this guy that's sitting behind me, you know, he's sitting there just up crying, bawling his eyes out. He was one of those guys like, what the hell did I just get myself into? And the chief stepped in this puddle of like water, and he looks up at the ceiling. He's looking around like, what the hell is it? And he looks down at this kid in the Smurfs, and he has pissed himself.
Oh man.
And I just hear him, what? You know, you have to look forward. You can't look back or around. You can't even make a facial expression.
Right.
And I just hear him say, what the hell? What? Did you just piss on yourself? And the kid had a wedding ring on at the time. And he goes, you're married? He said, oh, yeah, your wife's already sleeping with somebody else. He's like, you done pissed all over. What the hell? Get up. And I'm like, oh, shit.
Jesus.
And so, you know, I at that moment, I was like, you know, I don't want to stand out. I'm not going to be first. I'm not going to be last.
Right.
And if kids like this are already getting in trouble, then I know I'm going to be okay.
Just kind of coast through.
Yeah, I'm like, you know what? Like, I'm not going to be that guy.
So when did you go through? What month was it?
It was in May 24th.
Okay. So was it kind of out of that snowing period there?
It wasn't cold at all.
Okay.
Yeah, it was nice.
Because I know that's a big shock for Texans going up there and like, what's all this white stuff falling from the sky?
Yeah, no, it was nice. You know, I was in there. I spent my I turned 19 in boot camp, so I spent my birthday there. You know, but boot camp really, what I took away from that, you know, Chief Hercules Martin, I still remember to this day.
That's awesome.
Because he was the first male that I had in my life that believed in me. He gave me an opportunity to lead, and he had a group called his Alpha Males. And as you know, in boot camp, they give you the rank of first class, second class,
right.
And you become the leader of the RPOC and all that. And I wasn't that guy, but I was a LPO for my little section leader. And he called the Alpha Males. And, you know, it was the people that were performing at a higher level that just had a different mindset. And I was one of them because I didn't bitch and complain. I did the work and I excelled, in the physical aspect. Classroom, maybe. But, he gave us opportunities to lead, and he really believed in us and gave us the opportunity to say, man, what is possible? And I remember his name even today, 18 years later.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And did you felt like, you were motivated to not let him down either, right? Like,
When there's an expectation put on you, I think you rise or fall to that level of expectation. Before that, I had there was no expectation. The expectation was this guy's going to be a failure.
Right. Yep.
So that's what I was doing. I was proving him right.
Right. I could say I had a fairly similar experience with my RDC, Chief Sutherland, now Senior Chief Sutherland. Same thing. I talk to him on a regular basis. He's kind of one of my original mentors. But same thing. Like, he just had such an expectation of me that I didn't want to let him down.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think especially as men, I used to get beat all the time, and the worst thing that you can do. And I have 2 boys now. And I spanked their butts when they got in trouble. I used to, but I realized that doesn't do, after a while, you become numb to it.
Right. Yep.
What really hurts, what really gets to your soul is when somebody says, I'm disappointed in you.
Yep.
As men, I think we have this internal intuition. When we hear the word disappointment, that's the ultimate,
for sure. Yep. Absolutely. 100%. All right, so you kind of went through boot camp, kind of like you said, just kind of no one's going to know your name, but I'm not going to be last. And core school was at Great Lakes at that point?
Yeah, so at that time, I was actually a dental tech.
Oh, okay.
So I went to Texas, to Wichita Falls, Texas.
Okay.
As a dental tech, and I specialized in maxillofacial prosthetics. But the first couple months that I was a DT, we merged with the hospital corpsman. And so it was like, okay, you're a dental tech, now you're a corpsman. And so I made E4, E5, E6 as a corpsman because they did away with the rating.
The rating.
Yeah.
So did that change your detailing at all when they merged?
Yeah.
So
I went to Bethesda, Maryland, my first duty station. Mm-hmm. But let's back it up to A school, right? So I changed. I put the uniform on. I was like, all right, cool, I'm good. And I went to A school, and I went through. I had distinguished grad, all that stuff, and then I went out with some friends, some guys from the class. They were fleet returnees, and they were all going out for drinks. And I was 19 at the time, and they bought me a drink. Well, we got back on base. The guy that was driving got a DUI, and they breathalyzed everybody in the car. And so here I am getting breathalyzed, and it wasn't long before I was standing in front of the man, and they went to captain's mast, and they were getting ready to kick me out of the military. And I was like, oh man, like, here we go. I'm about to go back to where I came from. And luckily, the senior chief said, man, everybody drinks. You just got caught. This can make you or it can break you. And what was cool about that is in that moment, they gave me the opportunity. And it turned out to be a blessing in disguise because all my friends went to San Diego. They went to Portsmouth, to where the water was. Right. And I got sent to Bethesda, Maryland because I was on hold. And all the orders got given away. So I was like, Bethesda, Maryland, what the hell's up there? There's no water. But it ended up being the best thing for me.
That's awesome. It's kind of going back to that conversation you had with the rancher, right? Like, at the time it may not seem like anything, but as you said, your first duty station was a blessing in disguise. That's cool. Did you lose any kind of rank or anything in that? Or
I got busted down from E2 to E1, so it wasn't much. If you're going to mess up, I think that's the time to do it.
Right, absolutely.
And what was cool about that is that senior chief, Kevin Berg, I remember him till today, he was my senior enlisted leader. And when I went to Bethesda, I got done there. I got into maxillofacial prosthetics, and as you said, the war was going on, so we were taking in casualties from Iraq and Afghanistan. Their faces were blown up, their bodies were mangled. And so at the E1, E1, about to make E2 again, I was thrown into the OR where we were doing trauma surgeries and reconstructive surgeries, and people were dying left and right on the table. And it was just like, wow, and these kids were my age, 18, 19 years old. Right. And I got to see really the remnants of what war looked like. And I was like, holy cow, this is real. Right. And it was no better way to get your experience and your skill set up than to get into it and learn on the fly. Well, we merged with corpsman, and I got orders to 3rd Med Battalion in Okinawa, Japan, as a corpsman, right? And I'm over here like, what the hell? Like, I was supposed to be a dental tech. Mm-hmm. Well, when I got there, they had 3rd MEF had a change of command, and the command master chief was now going to be Master Chief Kevin Berg.
Oh, awesome.
And at that time, I was already E5. Like, I picked up rank quick. E4 first time, E5 first time. And after the change of command, he said, I know you from somewhere. And I was like, yes, Master Chief. I was the idiot that got in trouble. He goes, yeah, you're the guy. He's like, damn, you're E5 already? And I was like, yeah, I am. He goes, wow, good job. He goes, would you do me the honor of letting me sit your boards for your FMF pin? I said, absolutely. And so the FMF pin that I wear today, even as an officer, is the one that he gave me off of his chest.
That's awesome.
And it was really cool because after that, I'd go back to Bethesda. After, volunteering to go to Iraq and Afghanistan, they said no. And I volunteered to go to a ship. They said no because of my specialty. So they sent me back to Bethesda, and I ended up getting commissioned. I worked with the president, President Obama, and then I got a commission out of there. And I went to San Diego as a brand new ensign, and I was walking the halls, and lo and behold, retired Master Chief Berg was now in charge of the Red Cross.
Oh, wow.
And he was walking the halls, and he said, ensign. And I was like, hey, Master Chief. He goes, what the hell, you're an officer now? And I said, yeah, I am. He goes, wow. And that's because what you told me back in A school, I took it and I ran with it.
Wow.
So it was really cool to come full circle.
That's awesome. We definitely covered a lot there. You kind of just brushed over the whole commissioning thing, and but one question I do want to ask before we get to that. I love talking to fellowship mates who were kind of in it in the early 2000s. What was like the mentality of the military? Like, I'm assuming it was different, and how was it different? What was just like the overall culture of the military back there, or the Navy specifically back then?
Yeah, I find myself today saying, man, it's changed so much. I feel old saying it, but it's like, it's not how it used to be, right? Mm-hmm. Because we're not doing nothing.
Right.
And I think it's in those times where we're struggling, where we find ourselves in a bad situation, that we really lean on each other, and it was really my family, it was my brothers and sisters, that when we had a patient die, or we were in the OR and we're trying to figure out how to put this person's face back together, that we really lean on each other, because I was brand new, but I had E5s and E6s that took me under their wing, and they were teaching me, and they were nurturing me, and when I failed, they picked me up. And it was a bond that I think only you create when you are put in a difficult position.
Absolutely.
And we look at it now, and it's always this comparison and competition of who's better than who. And as you know, like, we can't move forward as one whole unit when we're sitting here fighting with our own kind.
Right.
It's a division.
Mm-hmm.
And back then it was just such camaraderie and such a bond because we went through some struggles together.
And I guess you could say there's overall common goal too, as far as
the mission. The mission
right?
was, hey, this guy's got to live. Well, we got to do everything we can to make sure this person makes it out of here. And it didn't always happen, but at the end of the day, as we sat down and did our debriefs, it was like we did the best that we could. And we had leaders that, hey, no matter the outcome, I'm proud of you.
Right.
So that was a big thing to help me overcome this feeling of failure when we couldn't keep a patient, we couldn't resuscitate them, we couldn't, save them, and we had to end up getting the body bag, and it's like, gosh, another one. And it was like, hey, that's the name of the game. That's the way it's going to be.
Right. It's just the time we were in, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And as an E2, you're like, wow, and that set the tone, I think, for how I looked at things a little differently. Life, my situation, my circumstances, where I came from, and I think that when you have people now that are going through the ranks or the military, and there's not that difficult, scenario or circumstances, we don't know how to deal with failure. We don't know how to deal with complicated life things.
Mm-hmm. It's I guess the best word to describe that's probably perspective.
Yeah.
Right? It's
we take things for granted. We say, oh, this sucks. I'm like, dude, this doesn't suck. You ain't seen suck yet.
Right. Absolutely. Yep. 100%. So you said so Bethesda was first, then you went to Oki, and then back to Bethesda. Where that second time at Bethesda is when you commissioned?
Yeah. So I went back to Bethesda, and I was this time. If you've ever been there, there's a hospital and then there's a big tower. Okay. And at that time, it was Naval Personnel Training and Education. It changed now to some Navy Medicine Leadership Development, but I was in the tower this time, and I was training doctors. These are maxillofacial surgeons. Because of my background and specialty, I was helping them kind of learn their craft. And the opportunity came to be on what's called Me2 team, the Medical Executive Treatment Unit. And I was like, yeah, sure, it sounds cool. I didn't know that you're going to be taking care of the president,
Right.
And I interviewed for it, and I got picked up for it, and I got to do that for 2 years I was there. And while I was there, I was like, just like everybody else, I'm going to get out and I'm going to go to school. I was like, I'm done. I'm 86 in 5 years. Like, what do I do now? And my mentor said, you're going to put an officer package in. I'm like, well, what am I going to do? You can be a nurse. I'm like, that's a girl's job. I'm not going to clean butts and piss and all that. And she said, no, you're gonna put it in. I'm going to help you. And the problem was, is not that I didn't want to do it, it's that I didn't believe in myself that I could do it. Like, why would they pick somebody like me to be a naval officer?
Right.
There was no proof that it was possible. But if I back it up just a couple more years, I know we skipped through this, but I went home on leave when I was at E4, the first time going back to where I came from, and I was really close with my grandmother because she was kind of the only person that spoke life into me. You know, my dad left when I was 2. My mom gave us away when I was 6 to a foster care, and my grandmother, she really took care of us since my dad wasn't there. And when I came home, I sat down on the couch with her, and she pulled out all these cruise books. And my grandfather, who I was pretty close with, that's why I said I'd love to have dinner with him if he was alive again. He served in the military as an electrician's mate in Japan. And it was cool because I got to see his cruise. I still have them today. She gave them all to me. But all his pictures, all his cruise books. And then I really realized that, man, I'm carrying on a legacy that I didn't even know. That he went and served, and he served his country in the Korean War. And I got to go back and look through his yearbooks and stuff, and like, wow, I'm kind of carrying that tradition. I never even knew it.
That's very cool. Awesome. So did you go through the MESEP program? So you got accepted and then went to school, or were you doing school to?
So I was doing school here and there. You know, I took college classes everywhere I went. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. But you know, I started out with like degree in psychology, a degree in sports medicine. I did biology, and I did good. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew it was something in the science field. I was really good in science, and I had a bunch of credits, you know, racked up, going nowhere. And when the opportunity presented itself, I had the grades. I had just picked up Sailor of the Year. I was working with the president. Everything kind of lined up. And so when I went to my boards, you know, my past got brought up. Oh, you have NJP. Oh, you know, this and this. And they said, you know, usually we ask the question, how do we know that you've overcome this? But in that case, my career spoke for itself because I had a chip on my shoulder. Like, I'm never going to do that again. And so everything from that point on was that sustained superior performance. The problem is that I always hid my past. I hid it behind all the achievements. I was chasing these credentials and the rank and the medals and everything else because I thought that if I could change the outside, that people would validate me or accept me or look at me for something different than what I felt on the inside. And there was always this emptiness, this sense of like, there's this internal struggle that I was having with my identity. And when I put the uniform on, I said Batman, right? Because he was a normal person, but when he put the cape on, he was a superhero. Right. And so when I put my uniform on, I didn't have to look at myself as, oh, that troubled kid, that person who struggled with his identity or confidence. And so people are like, oh, HM1, like, oh yeah, he's a rock star, the go-getter, the person you call to go get things done. But when I take it off and I come home, I was like, oh, here I am looking in the mirror at this broken kid that struggled and was stupid or didn't have what it took, you know. And so I always chased this validation. And I often say, you know, you don't ever want to look for external solutions for an internal problem. And that's what I was doing. And so when they told me I'm going to be commissioned as an officer, I'm like, there's no way. Like, why not? Because what you see is what I don't see. When I look in the mirror, I can't say I'm proud of you. Because I want my parents to say I'm proud of you. I want somebody else to tell me I'm proud of me. And I never got that. And so I chased this elusive success. And to everybody else, it looked like, hey, you got it together.
Right.
But to me, I you can fool other people, but you can't fool yourself.
So it's crazy. You're kind of speaking to me a lot. How did you kind of battle through that? Like you said, like you put the uniform on, you let your career do the talking, but it's almost like you feel like you're almost not achieving anything on the inside. Like how did you work through that?
Yeah, you know, I had to really look at myself and take a really strong evaluation of who I was as a person. And I often see, I'm sure you've seen it before, but we see these high-ranking people get out of the military to hang the uniform up and to hang up their identity. And I realized that, you know, although I'm achieving all these things on the outside, these credentials, I had to work on my character. And the way I had to do that was I had to really start keeping these promises to myself, because I would go and do everything for everybody else, but I'd never do anything for me. I was a people pleaser, and when you needed something, I'd drop everything. I'd give you all my money, even if it meant I was going to go broke, because maybe you would tell me that, hey, thank you, or I'm proud of you. And I realized that, you know what, I got to be proud of me. And so I had to get to work on me. And that meant as simple as, I'm going to go to the gym today for 30 minutes. And I started there. I started saying, you know what? I'm keeping the promises I'm going to make to myself. And so every morning I'd write down 3 goals that I want to achieve for the day, for me. And I would get it done. So at the end of the day, I get a win. And I found that if you get a win for the day, you can win the week. And if you can win the week, you can win the month. And if you win the month, chances are you're going to win the quarter. And if you win the quarter, then you could win the year. You rack up enough wins on those days where you don't feel confident, because I still get it, all right? You still get this self-doubt and this self kind of, I won't call it depression, but you get in these stages where you're like, man, nothing's going well. And I go through that book and I say, I got to fucking win today. And then you prove it to yourself, like, dude, you're not a loser. You do have what it takes. Look at all the wins you have. And I started slowly proving it to myself that it is possible, and then you do have what it takes. There's not another person like you. And I'd find myself outside running in the heat and the snow, PTing, and then I found myself in the books, and I started doing good in school. Even when I felt like I didn't have time, I'd put in the work for my mindset, the education. And then I got the formal education. Then I said, okay, now I got to get this character building. So I started studying leadership and development and figuring out how can I apply this to my life. And I started doing that, and over time, it's like, man, you start piling up these wins, and when you do that and you look in the mirror and say, I'm proud of you, nobody can take that away. No failure can stop you from moving forward.
It's definitely my, personally, that's my biggest hang up, and I'm sure there's tons of people like me out there that this may even benefit listening to this, but it's like that's all I listen to is, motivational stuff. Like I love reading, I try to push myself, but it's like once I do things, or once I read things or listen to things, it's hard to like implement them, right?
Yeah.
But what I found myself that motivates me the most is other people depending on me. Yeah. So if I say I'm going to wake up and go to the gym tomorrow at 5 to work out by myself, I'll hit the snooze button 107 times. But if I tell someone to meet me there at 5, I'll be there at 4:30 because I don't want to let them down.
Right.
And it's, I don't know if that's good, but I found that, that's what works and motivates me the best is when, kind of going back to what we talked about before, like I don't want to let someone down.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think too, in the work that we do, you can get so busy just trying to do everything. And when I started out, I would do these things, and I would be like, okay, cool, you got it done. Okay, what's next?
Right.
Okay, what's next? Mm-hmm. What's next? Never taking the time to pause and say, okay, man, you did it today. Mm-hmm. And so giving yourself a pat on the back, telling yourself, I'm proud of you. It's a self-talk, and it's so important because we live in a busy world. We got everything at the palm of our hands and a phone. We get so tied up in like the work and the grind, and we have people out there that just tell me, you got to grind it out, whatever, go all out, 100%, blah, blah, blah. But what I found is it's in those times of pausing and reflecting and saying, man, look how much you've accomplished.
Right.
Because when I got commissioned, I got to stand on stage, I changed the uniform, I doubled my income, I did it, first time up, all this stuff. And I stepped off the stage, the lights went out in the auditorium, and back to square one. Here we are again. Like, shit, I've changed, but I haven't changed.
Right.
And I had to realize that, dude, you got to pause and let that growth catch up to you. Because you can go, but if you don't pause, it never catches up, and you never really have time to say, man, I've done it.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that you have to say, I made it, I'm better than anybody, or I achieved anything. It's just pausing and being appreciative of how far you've come. For
sure. That's such good advice. Because, again, I'm going through a lot of that right now. Just, chasing a degree, right? I'm in my last semester right now, finally finished my bachelor's. But it's like I was so hungry. I want to finish this. I want to put an OCS package. But like now that like I'm in my last semester, it's like I'm almost, not like I'm over it, but it's like it's done. What's next? But it's like I'm never, but if I sit and think about it, like, hey, I'm the first one in my family to go to college, let alone finish it. It's like, so like you said, if you just sit and pause for a second and think about it, like, you did accomplish something, even though you may not feel like you have.
Yeah, I went to therapy a couple years ago, and I sat there with my therapist, and I was like, man, why do I feel this way? Why am I like spending time with my family and I just don't feel any joy? And we started talking about everything. He says, you have summit syndrome. I'm like, well, what the hell is that, doc? And he goes, you climb these summits, you scale these mountains, and you get up to the top, and you don't enjoy the view. You just look for the next one.
Right. And
you go to the next one. You try to climb the next summit. He said, I want to encourage you to just stop and pause and take the view in. Take a deep breath and look around. He said, you got a beautiful family. You got beautiful kids. They're healthy. You know, how many kids have we taken care of, families that their kids are got a disability, and you're like, wow. And I was like, you're right. He said, stop looking for the next summit to climb. He said, just pause and reflect and just look at the view and enjoy it, appreciate it. And then when you're ready, go for the next one.
Perspective and gratitude, I guess.
Gratitude is huge.
Yep.
You know, and in the mornings, I often do, I mean, I say I do it every day, but I do write a little gratitude entry. What am I grateful for today? Because that sets the tone for how the day goes. So no matter what happens, that you start the day off with what you have instead of what you do not have.
Right. It's kind of a play off like the make your bed thing, right? Like, make your bed, and at least you can come back to a made bed kind of thing.
Yeah, and Darren Hardy talks about this in the Compound Effect, the book. He says, you know, you got to bookend your days. You start it on your terms and you end it on your terms. No matter what happens in the middle, you can't control it, most of it.
Right.
But if you can control the beginning and the end, you can still eat that shit sandwich. You know? So you bookend your days, and you determine how you start it, and you determine how you end it. But how many times have we gone home exhausted from the day, and we just start drinking, and you know, we miss time with the kids and the wife. We have our drinks, and then we go to bed and wake up and do it again.
100%.
We get in, we check our emails, and all of a sudden shit just starts rolling downhill.
Right.
We get home like, I'm exhausted, but I haven't done anything. You know, that was my life for you know, for the better part of 10 years.
So kind of circling back, that was a great kind of segue into that. But so you get accepted into MESIP, you're an E6 at this point. What's that like? How did, I mean, is it pretty similar to how the program is now? Was it different in any way?
It was hard as hell. You know, at that time, you know, 350 people apply and they select 20. So I think it was like 0.5%, maybe 1%. I don't know the math. I'm not smart in that. But, you know, attention to detail is what I learned there, because I applied to all these colleges and I got accepted to UT, University of Texas in Austin. And as stupid as I was, I didn't know you had to apply to the university and the nursing school. So I applied to the university, I got accepted, and I put my package in, I got selected, and then Miss Kemp, who was the program manager, goes, hey, you got to have a nursing school. I was like, what are you talking about? I do. I'm going to UT.
Oh,
she said, no, you got accepted to the university. You didn't get accepted to the nursing school. So I called them back, and they were like, oh, sorry, Mr. Waite, we're not going to be able to get it to you in time before your board or before your acceptance. So I'm like, well, shit, what do I do? And so I went to Miss Kemp. I was like, look, I'm stuck. She's like, well, you're going to have to forfeit your commission. I was like, oh, great. So I started applying to colleges all around Maryland. She goes, go to somewhere around here, go there physically and talk to them. And I found a university that was a Christian university. You know, and I'm not religious. I say I'm spiritual, but I go there, and I didn't know what the hell it was. I was like, yeah, sure, I'll take it. You're going to take me? Let me go. And so I'm in class now, right? And I have to take, you know, so many credits of religious studies every semester on top of nursing school. And as I'm sitting in the class, you know, I'm probably the oldest person there, you know, 25 at the time. And there's all these young kids that are coming out of school, but their parents are, you know, preachers and all this stuff. So they're there, you know, carrying on the tradition. And I couldn't cite any Bible verse or anything. I was just like, man, as far as I know about God, he's striking me down. But what was cool was we got to learn about all the religions, Hindu, Buddhist, Catholicism, you know, Christianity, all the stuff. And it allowed me to get grounded kind of in my faith and really look at the side of my life that I never really looked at, because, again, if God was real, why would all these bad things happening to me? Right? Why does life happen to me? And what I found was life was always happening for me. And while I was in school, they had a mission trip to Haiti, and we're going there for a few months. We're going to do medicine for the people in Haiti after the earthquakes.
Okay. And
I had a little bit of medical background, obviously, from my experience in the military, but we weren't going with machines or pumps or medicine. We were going there to really help out wherever we can. And it was a humbling experience because they selected, you know, they wanted 10 people, and 500 people raised their hand. Of course, everybody wanted to go because they want to make their parents proud. And I'm like, you know what? If I'm qualified, I'll go. And they picked me. And so out of all the kids, I got picked. Not religious, not preaching the good word or whatever. I was just like, man, I just want to go. And the reason I wanted to go was, you know, I was married at the time. In my first semester of school, my wife had an affair with the guy that she worked with. And I just found that out. And my back was against the wall. I was like, man. And it was all about, you're too busy. You're focused on your career. You're not focused on your family. And I was like, what are you talking about? We just built a brand new house. I'm doing everything I can. I just got selected for commissioning. We're going to make it. Just stick with me, and we're going to figure this out. And she was already in a relationship, and I was like, wow. So that was my way of trying to run from my problems. Little did I know that it was going to help me face my problems, right? You don't fake it till you make it. You got to face it.
Right.
And so here I'm going to Haiti, fresh through a divorce, like we're in the separation process. She still has access to my house. Well, I'm in Haiti, and my neighbor, we don't have phones, we don't have running water, we don't have internet, we don't have TV. We're there living in a village, like legit, like back like I was homeless again. So I was like, cool, I'm good. At least we got a roof over our head. I get a message. We have these little, like every once a week we can get on this little memo thing and we can get messages.
Okay.
Well, my neighbor was my point of contact because he was watching my bulldog at the time. He said, dude, does your wife have, or your ex-wife have, did you give her a key to the house? And I'm like, well, she still has access because we're separated, but she shouldn't be there. And she's like, well, her and some dude are taking all your furniture.
Oh my God.
And I was like, what? So he said, yeah, they're carrying all your stuff. I was like, well, stop them. Like, what the hell? And he's like, bro, he's like, they're already gone. And I was like, great. So I couldn't really focus on that because we were taking care of all these sick people. I mean, it was little kids like missing their legs and their arms, people dying left and right. It was really bad because it was corrupt at that time. You know, the political thing over there, they were stealing all the money that was donated to them and all the stuff, right? And so I was focused on the mission. And when I got back, I remember coming home and I was sitting on my floor because I didn't have no furniture. And it was interesting because I sat down on the floor and I picked up the phone and I called my sister and I said, hey, what's Dad's number? And I haven't talked to my dad since I was a kid. And she's like, well, why do you want that? Because you haven't talked to him forever. I was like, I just want to give him a shout. And it was this moment, kind of like when I joined the military, that I had this feeling, this internal kind of feeling that that says, hey, call your dad and forgive him. And so I called him. And I'm Anthony Stephen Wade Jr. He's a senior. And he didn't know who I was. I was like, it's your son.
Wow.
Your only son. Like, you got like 20 kids. It's just me. And he didn't know who I was. I mean, he's addicted to drugs, so I'm sure he was probably high at the time. And I said, I forgive you. And I'm sorry for whatever I did to resent you as your son, to resent me as your son. And he said, okay, I got to go, bye. And I hung up the phone, and I remember just crying like a baby. And after I was done with that, I just had a sense of peace come over my life. Like, I let go of the baggage. And it was that time in my life where I was just like, you know what? I freed myself from this cage that I allowed him to put me in. Not knowing that he was doing it, but...
Right.
And then I called my ex-wife, and I said, hey, I was like, I just want to apologize for whatever I did to cause this to happen, and I'm sorry, and I forgive you. And she said, are you crazy? I said, no, I just want you to know. She goes, well, just so you know, before you hear from anybody else, I'm pregnant. And I was like, well, congratulations. It was from, the guy that she was.
Right.
And I was like, I wish you the best. And I hung up the phone, and, it was just crazy because that moment on, I was able to move forward with a purpose. I let go of all the baggage, and I was able to move forward just at a faster pace, this rapid pace where I was like, you know what? I don't owe anybody anything. And then 2 years later, I meet my wife now. We've been married for 10 years. We got 2 beautiful sons. But I look back on that, and I was like, I couldn't be the man that I am today, the husband, the father, the leader that I am today if I would have never let go.
Right.
They say, forgiveness is letting go of the hope that things could have been different. And for all my life, I wanted things to be different. You see people that had a good childhood growing up. You see people with beautiful marriages, and they feel like they got their shit together, right? And you look at your life, you're like, man, why is things always screwed up for me? But in reality, it's not.
Right.
And that allowed me to let go of that hope of, man, things could have been different if only I would have changed. Mm-hmm. Because again, I blame myself. Oh, I'm caught up in my career. I'm too busy. I screwed up my marriage. Oh, I was a bad kid. Maybe that's why my dad left. My mom gave us away at 6. Maybe they didn't love me because of who I was. And that allowed me to say, it's not your fault. It's never your fault. Mm-hmm. And even if it is, it might not be your fault, but it's always your responsibility to take action, to take control of your life and take hold of the wheel and start steering this thing in the right direction. And so that's what I did. And so school was really interesting for me because it was a breakthrough moment for me to where I got to really get grounded in who I was. And I did pretty good. I mean, I proved to myself that, hey, you ain't a dumbass. You have some shitty grades, but now you're doing all right. And I graduated with honors, and I got my commission in and everything. And it was a cool time because I got to really see a different part of my life and who I was as a person.
That's awesome. Again, I mean, we just covered so much there. Kind of going back to the reason that you picked up that phone and called your dad and your ex-wife, was any of that, did you start to practice faith? Was that like faith-based, or was it just,
no, I mean, even till today, I don't go to church. I did for a while when we were in San Diego and in Charleston, but you know, I think we all have that spiritual side of us, right? That's our true self, our authentic self. But we mask it behind all this other stuff, right? The ways of the world, or, you know, influences, or whatever the case may be. And it wasn't like I came home and prayed to God or read the Bible or, you know, really like did some kind of mantra or something that got me prepared. It was just in that moment, that's what I felt. And I think it goes back to, you know, when we're stripped of what we think we are. You know, I had a beautiful house, no furniture, you know, all the things I was collecting was gone. When I was homeless, everything that I thought I was stripped away. And it's in those moments that we get rid of all this baggage and this who we think we should be, you know, impressing people that we don't even know.
Right.
You know, I had the BMW 5 Series. I had a brand new house. I had all these things. And all that was taken away, and all I was left with was who I was.
Right.
And I think when we peel back the layers of our life and all these things that we say we think we are, and for the people in the military, when we take off this uniform and we're stripped down bare, everything that we have accomplished doesn't matter. It's about who we are as a person. And I think in those moments, if I had to tie those two together, making the decision to go to the military, which I can't explain even today, calling my dad or my ex-wife, I can only chalk it up to I was vulnerable, but I was also in tune with my authentic self. Because I could have easily said, oh, screw them. You know, they're the problem. Like, and we put this mask on like it's not my problem. Right. I didn't do it. It's not my fault. But I took responsibility. Hey, I forgive you, and I'm sorry. And that takes a lot of courage, but also it takes away the power that they have over your life. Because I could have easily went on about my life and feeling sorry for myself, or feeling like a victim, or even worse, feeling like the bad guy.
Right.
You know.
Something too. I feel like you could, you know, especially with like parents and stuff like that. A lot of times, we do have resentments against them for, you know, certain reasons, and we're angry about that.
Yeah.
But then you can kind of look at it, especially when you're older, have a different perspective on life, and say, you know, I get it, but also thank you because you showed me not just what to do, but what not to do.
Right.
And you know, utilize that in my own life as being a parent and stuff like that.
Well, and we learn best from some of those people, right? Our parents, even if they teach us what not to do, that's the best lessons. Right. Leadership, the worst leaders teach you the best lessons because it tells you what not to do.
Exactly. But sometimes it's definitely, at least for me, it's a little too late for me to say thank you to them. But, you know, this past year, in 7 months, I lost my stepdad, my grandfather, and my dad, all in 7 months, from July to February of this year, in that order. And, you know, I was lucky enough that my stepdad came in my life when I was 8. So, I always said I kind of had two dads growing up. And my dad, right, he had his demons, but he always protected me, and he always gave me whatever I wanted. If it was either that's the only way he knew how to, right? Because his dad wasn't in his life either, so you know he didn't know how to be a dad. So I think just giving me whatever I wanted was what he thought was right? And
then, that's his way of expressing love. Yeah,
exactly. And then my stepfather, he was a CB, old, Dixie shorts, chopper, like long hair, like just, tough biker dude. And, if you weren't up by 5:30, you didn't eat breakfast kind of atmosphere, and I hated that as a young kid. I loved being at my dad's house because I could do whatever I wanted, right? Yeah. And then, growing up, as I joined the military, as I became a parent, a husband, like I appreciated my stepdad, not much more, but, I appreciated that life more and wish I utilized it more back then because I feel like I would have grown up a little bit faster, and it just sucks that I never got to have that conversation with either of them. But yeah, totally. I don't know. I just want to kind of get that off my chest, I guess.
Yeah, no. It's always in hindsight, right? We look back and say, man, what if? Right. Some of the best lessons, we don't learn till later in life.
Absolutely.
And I always say, until we learn the lesson, life will continue to give us the test. Mm-hmm. We live our life getting this test over and over again, thinking, why the hell does this always happen to me?
Right.
But as you figured out, like this happened for me because now I'm in the military and I'm doing these things, and those little things that he taught me served me well because I'm up early, getting the job done, Now you're leading people and teaching them that, but you're living the example that you're setting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so back to you. So what year are we at now with your earning your commission after MESA?
2014.
2014. Yep. So obviously a great accomplishment, especially kind of coming the upbringing you had, right? Not to assume, but I'm assuming you never thought you would even go to college, let alone be an officer in the military.
No way in hell, yeah.
And kind of like you said, you paused and said, "Hey, like this is something I accomplished." Where did you go from there? At once you commissioned? Yeah,
so it was 2014, and I was in Maryland still, and I was dating my now wife, and we both were previously married, so there was a lot of baggage we brought to the table. There was insecurity, all that stuff, and I remember picking orders to San Diego, and I was like, "Well, I'm going to San Diego," and she said, "Well, I'm coming with you." Now, she's an IT at the time at Department of Energy. She was a prior IT in the Navy.
Oh, okay.
We learned about that when we were dating. But she said, "I'm coming with you." And I was like, "Well, you got your career and everything here." Like, she said, I'm coming with you. And I was like, "Okay." So we went to San Diego. We got there, new commissioned officer. We were dating at the time. And then we got married, and we were having our first son. And I thought I had it all figured out. I was like, "All right, cool. Everything's rocking and rolling." Until I realized that I don't even know how to be a father. I don't even know how to be a man. Like, how am I going to do this? And I struggled, man. I was like, new officer working in the critical care unit, a lot of responsibilities. And I didn't know how to do it. And I remember going to my leadership and telling them I'm struggling personally and it's affected me professionally. And their response was, "Hey, you're deploying in 2 weeks." And I was like, "What? Well, did you hear what I said?"
Right.
And I was like, "Crap! Like, what am I going to do?" And somebody gave me the book, 15 Laws of Invaluable Growth by John Maxwell. And I went on the deployment. Luckily I got back. My wife was still there. And, I got to watch my son have his first birthday, talk and walk over a camera. Mm-hmm. And I read that book probably 20 times. And that was when I realized that I got more growing to do. I got more growing in my character that I need to do. And that 8-month deployment was really my job. My job internally was to figure out this new road ahead. That I can't just run from my problems. I got a brand new son, and it's easy for me to say, well, I can run away from it like my dad did. Right. But my chip on my shoulder was I'll never be like him. And so I used that as fuel to say, okay, what do I need to do to forge my future?
Right. So where did you deploy to?
So we went to 10 different countries. It was humanitarian disaster relief, and so we went to mostly Southeast Asia. We went to Malaysia, Indonesia, East Timor, Philippines, Guam. I'm sure some other countries. There was a bunch, and we were just rocking and rolling.
And you were an ensign at this time, right? Obviously.
Ensign, yeah. And then I put on JG while we were gone.
So any kind of in that tour, as far as I know, we're talking a lot about personal life stuff. As far as professional, any kind of stories that stand out that maybe you kind of saw that the difference between being an enlisted to an officer, and anything that happened during that deployment?
Yeah, there was a couple of things. Being a Mustang, I think I have a unique way of connecting with my enlisted guys. My heart's always been with the enlisted because I know personally the struggles that you guys go through. And one thing about me is I'm not afraid to peel back the curtain and show you the truth. It's easy to say I'm here and this is what I do. But I'm like, no, man, I get it. And so I always had mentorship meetings with whoever wanted to come. And I have a picture still somebody took. I was mentoring probably about 30 enlisted because when we go on deployments, it gets tough. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of segregation, enlisted officer, blah, blah, blah. And so I was having a mentorship meeting and sharing kind of how to get commissioned, some success tools for, achieving rank and everything like that. And we were in East Timor. Now, East Timor is interesting because that's where Starbucks harvests his coffee. I didn't know that, but that's where they get their coffee beans. But in there, they had just got taken over by the Portuguese. And there was something that happened there where they got overrun by the Portuguese and people were just getting slaughtered. And we had this baby. He was probably 2 years old. No, maybe a year old at the most. And what happened was when the Portuguese took over, his dad was killed And his dad, before he got killed, threw his baby in the fire because he'd rather him die by his hands than by somebody else's hands.
Wow.
And so his baby was burnt not by 80% of his body. And as you know, in the medical field, usually you die.
Right.
Like the rule of nines don't even matter at that point.
Right.
And he was missing fingers. He was going blind because his eyelids were melted open.
Jeez.
And all this stuff, right? And he was in the NICU, and the nurses there, specialize in babies. I don't do babies. Like, that's not my thing. It breaks my heart.
Yeah.
And she said, I'm coming to the ICU because we given him all the medication, and we can't figure out why he won't stop crying. And I was like, well, shit. I mean, what do you want me to do? You're the specialist.
Right.
And so he's there in the ICU, and we're trying to do everything we can. And I said, you know what? Do you have a book or something that he brought, or that we have on the NICU deck? And so she said, yeah, we have some books. I said, go bring me one of them. And again, it's this intuition that I think we have when we're in our craft, and we know, okay, what else can we do? And so I got a book and I started reading to him. And he don't speak the same language as me. His family speaks Portuguese or whatever the language is. And I started reading to him. And all of a sudden he stopped crying. And I was like, wow, we've done given him morphine. We've done given him everything we can. We maxed out everything. And I started reading, and he just got quiet. And again, I have this picture because one of the nurses took a picture of it.
Oh,
and
wow.
I'm sitting there with him, and he had, I think it was like 2 fingers, and he was pointing to the book. And we just started talking, like just having this conversation as if we connected. And they were like, wow, like, how'd you do that? I was like, I don't know. And I was like, if I had to assume why he stopped crying, I was like, maybe, and just maybe, again, I'm not religious. I think spiritual is a good way to put it. But I was like, maybe the last voice that he heard was a man's voice. And now he has his mother and grandmother. He doesn't have that man's voice in his life. Maybe his dad was the last one that talked to him before he got these burns. And I was like, the only thing I can say is that maybe if it was a man's voice that would comfort him, because all the nurses were females. And I was like, what if it was just hearing the sound of a man's voice comforted him in that time? Because maybe he misses his father.
Right.
And to this day, I don't know how to explain it, but he stopped crying. He went to bed. We tucked him in. I gave him he had a little tiger with him. And we tucked him in, and he slept. And when he woke up, I stayed there all night because I was like, when he wakes up, I want to make sure that he's good to go. And he woke up, and he looked at me, smiled, and he went on to his surgery, and I never seen him again. But it was just really cool to see, like, that connection. And as a provider, we're taught medications, pharmacology, machines, pumps, all these different things. And sometimes the best medicine is just being present. And that really spoke to me. And that night I was sitting on the flight deck, and I called my wife and FaceTime with my son. And I just had a renewed sense of gratitude.
That was going to be my follow-up question, but you just kind of answered it. So
yeah, because I saw a little boy, and I was like, man, he's the same age as my son.
Right.
And here I am bitching and complaining about my situation. And I was like, I got a beautiful boy at home. And I can't wait to get home to him.
Right. That's awesome. So you, how long was that? 6 month normal or?
It was about 8 months.
8 months.
We got extended, yeah. So we got back October. So we left in April, till October.
Okay. And when did the I guess online presence, I guess is the best way to put it, and kind of the MESUP University, like where did that come into? Did you have one of those moments where, like, hey, like, this is what I'm supposed to do? Kind of how did that side of your life start / evolve?
Yeah, so when I got back, like I said, I just had a renewed sense of gratitude and purpose. And, I think whenever we're able to grow ourselves, only then can we grow other people. And when I got back, I was like, okay, I gotta do something with these gifts and talents and abilities that I was given. And so I started taking inventory. Like, what have I done? What have I accomplished? I was like, well, I got commissioned, and obviously it was like the luck of the draw, but maybe it was for a reason. So I said, you know what? Let me start helping people that want to do the same. So I started thinking about it. I was like, okay, MESUP University. That sounds cool. I mean, it's a university. It's education to help people, And so I started doing that, and just, 1 or 2 people, and then it turned into this big symposium in San Diego. We had people coming from all over the place, all over San Diego, 32nd Street, Camp Pendleton. We had captains and commanders like, wow, this is amazing. Well, at that time, the Navy's about 10 years behind, so online stuff was like, what?
Right.
And so I started streaming it online, and people were like, wow, this guy's like impressive. But not only did I share like how to go to MESEP, but I shared my story.
Right.
And people resonated with it. Like, wow, if he can do it, so can I. And that's I think, as leaders, when you can instill that hope into people, that's where you get the movement. Motivation is great, but you want momentum. And in order to get people to move, you got to move them emotionally. And so I shared my story, and then I got to buy-in from other people. I had friends that were recon IDC, Navy SEALs, a whole plethora of people from all different walks of life. And they were inspired, and they said, I want to come talk too. So I gave a platform for them. I said, hey, come on, and you can come to this symposium. And it turned like 200-300 people. I was like, shit, I looked in the crowd like, man, I'm on stage right now, like, in this auditorium. And Navy's like, wow. And so it turned into this big movement, and to the point where I couldn't even walk away even if I wanted to, because then I'd be letting people down.
Right.
But that book, John Maxwell, the 15 Laws of Invaluable Growth, when I got back, I had the opportunity to meet John. And I sat in my office. Well, it was a guest room. Now I have a nice office, but back then it was a guest room with a little table. And there was an opportunity to hear him speak. And then from there, he said, I'm starting a coaching program where I want to raise up new leaders that want to help people. And at that time, I was like, I can't talk in front of people. There's no way. And I said, well, what if I can use it to grow myself and better my leadership, my character? And he was like, yeah, but it's 10 grand. I was like, I ain't got 10 grand, shoot. But I remember looking at my office. I had a little credit card there, and I swiped it, and John Maxwell became my mentor.
Wow.
And as I began to grow myself, I started building this belief that maybe it's possible that I could help people. And so as I grew myself, I started talking and figured out, man, it's possible. And so I started with the MESEP University, and then it turned into, hey, can you come speak here? Hey, can you come speak there? And I started doing it. I was like, wow, I might have something here. And after about 100 people telling me, man, you should start doing public speaking, I was like, you know what, maybe you're right. And so I started doing it, and people were like, wow, this is amazing. And I never looked at myself as somebody special. I just looked at myself as somebody with a story. And I wasn't afraid to share it anymore. I wasn't ashamed of my story anymore. In fact, I was like, maybe this is what I need to do. And it became like therapy to me. Every time I shared it, I was like, wow, I'm learning new things about me.
Right.
And the MESEP University grew. I started raising up other people who wanted to help other people. And now they become the mentors. And I just sit back and like, okay, if you need me, I'm here. And they still do it over there. It's cool. They call me like, hey, we're about to have another symposium. Can you open us up like BTC? I'm like, yeah. Well, it turned into a great mentorship platform, and then it turned it into leadership and development, because I found that, okay, these people want to go to MESEP. I can give them the tools, but as I found, if you don't grow yourself, you have no shot.
Right. You
got to be able to grow yourself first from the inside out, so that when you do get commissioned, you don't end up like me, stepping off the stage and still feeling like a loser, And so I started talking about that, like the personal development. Professional growth is going to happen.
Right.
We're going to progress no matter what. How you progress is determined by who you are on the inside. And so I started sharing that part, and people were like, wow, like, yeah, you're right. I need to do this. Because, I came up with a slogan, credentials will get you in the door, but character keeps you in the room.
I love that. I saw that on the Facebook. That's such a great quote.
Yeah, well, because people want to go and get commissioned, but it's like, why?
Right.
Oh, I want more money. You're going to get more money.
Right.
I want more rank. You're going to get more rank. But what does that do for you? As
Right.
you know, we have leaders that have high ranks that suck at who they are. Why be good at what you do and suck at who you are?
Right.
And I was like, I don't want you to just go be another officer. I want you to be the best officer you can be. And I started helping them with that, and it worked out to be great. I mean, it turned out into a good mentorship platform, and then I stepped into the realm of leadership and development. And in 2019, 2019, I was in Charleston, and my captain, my senior nurse executive, said, hey, I want to bring you on to the Nurse Corps quarterly leadership panel symposium, and I want you to speak. So she ran it up to Captain Loesch, who is the deputy director of the Nurse Corps. And I'm a JG at the time, about to be lieutenant. And they brought me in, and I just shared my story. And everybody was like silent. I was like, oh shit, did I get in trouble? And they said, and then Captain Loesch unmuted and said, unbelievable. We need people to hear your story. And then so the Nurse Corps has this junior officer symposium, and these captains try to come in and be like, this is what you need to do to be great. And then he said, we have somebody special for you today. We want to share something with you, a person with you who's going to help you see things a little differently. And they brought me in. I spoke to all the junior officers. And as you know, once you speak to one, and you speak to all of them, now your name's all over the place.
Right.
And that was that. I unmuted the line and said goodbye. And then I get an email saying, hey, the Admiral is requesting your presence in San Diego for the Senior Nurse Executive Leadership Strategic Planning for the whole Nurse Corps.
Wow.
And I'm like, all right, cool. Like, what do you want me to do? Like, just come and be part of it, or help out, like carry somebody's bags? And like, no, you're going to speak on the topic of transformational leadership. So I was like, okay, cool. Well, my senior nurse was like, we don't have the money to send you. And they said, don't worry, we're going to send a order mod, and we're going to pay for him to come out there for 5 days.
Wow.
And she's like, well, what about me? She's like, we don't have the money for you. So she didn't even go.
Oh, man.
And they paid for me to go.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, so I'm in San Diego now with all the 06s, 07s, and above, like in San Diego for 5 days. And I got there on a Friday night, and they said, well, we don't need you till Thursday. I was like, what do I do till then? She goes, I don't know, go enjoy San Diego. They pay for my food, they pay for my car. I was like, I'm getting paid to speak for 30 minutes?
Right.
I was like, okay. So here I am in San Diego, just enjoying, like connecting with old friends and everything like that. And then I'm in this room, the lowest ranking person in there speaking on the most important topic, leadership. And that's when I found that that's how you influence up the chain of command. Because it's easy to influence at your level. It's easy to influence below.
Right.
But how do you influence up and really connect? And that's what I talked about. And I had captains in there crying, bawling their eyes out, because they wish that they would have learned that earlier in their career.
Mm-hmm. So where do you think that came from? I mean, do you think it's your personality? I mean, was it kind of hard to do the public speaking thing in the beginning? Because kind of like what I said before, when you spoke at CQ, it's probably a couple months ago now. Do you recall that?
Yeah.
And like I said, I didn't realize who you were at that point, but like just that 5-10 minute spiel, like you had me locked in. I was like, extra motivated that day, right? And it's like, was that something that just came natural to you? I mean, it sounds like everything happened so fast. You're probably just kind of forced into getting good, like
Yeah.
Or was it just something that were you a talker growing up? Like, where did that come from, or how did you hone that skill?
It's funny you asked that because one of my first college classes when I started taking classes was it was a speech class, and one of the requirements to pass that class was getting and doing a 2-minute talk on a topic of your choice in front of the class, and there was like 10 people. And I picked Mike Tyson. I don't know why. His favorite boxer. He was a fighter. And 1 minute in, I started sweating. I started getting nervous, and I left the class. I ran out. And the teacher felt so bad for me. I left my bag. She came and brought me my backpack, and she said, "Mr. Wade, I'm not going to fail you because I feel bad for you." She said, "I'm going to give you a withdrawal." And I remember thinking, "Gosh, what an idiot!" And I was like, "I'll never do that again." I was so terrified to get in front of people. And I said, I'll never do that again. And I'm glad I didn't listen, because now I realize that, when you find your purpose, you no longer have to chase it. It chases you. And what I mean by that is now, when I get the opportunity to speak, I don't even think about it. Like, yeah, of course. And I think it goes with every day I sit down and I try to learn something, because if I can learn it, then I can live it. And if I can live it, then I can lead it.
Right.
But most people try to lead from something they never lived.
Or never done.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And so I never talk about things that I haven't lived out. When somebody says, can you talk about financial success? I'm like, no, I won't talk about that. Can you talk about that? Like business building? No, I have a coaching speaking business, but I don't look at myself as somebody who can show somebody how to be successful.
Right.
And so when it comes to public speaking, I think what makes me good, I say that humbly, but what makes me connect is that my ability to just share my true self, the authenticity. And it's scary, going to CQ and talking in front of people that I just met that, I only been there for like 6 months at the command. Nobody knew me from anybody. I mean, some people knew me from social media and whatever,
right.
But the way I look at it is, it's not about me. I don't go into a room and say, okay, what am I going to teach them? It's what do I think they might want to know?
Yeah, right.
And it's about them. If I can just move one person, if I can just impact one person, then that's good enough.
Right. And it's, I think one of the biggest things, especially nowadays, you kind of touched on it, right? It's a lot of people like to talk about stuff that they've never done, or they tell you exactly. I think what definitely makes you unique, and you kind of touched on it also, is what allows you to be genuine, which is the best way to be when you're trying to connect with people, and people can obviously read that. You're being you. You're telling your story, right? There's no lesson plan to that. There's no fluff to that. Yeah. You're telling your story, and that alone is, that's all you need sometimes, like you said.
Yeah, because what happens is when you walk into a room, and let's say you're the speaker, and your name's on the docket, and you walk in front of a crowd, they're already going to judge you. They're going to criticize you. They already have this thought about you.
Right.
And your job now is to break that barrier and build a bridge. And when I look at my audience, like at CQ, for example, I look across the room and I see people like you. I see other people that are in there. But I see myself. Like if I was sitting in those seats, which I was at one point, what would I have wanted to know? What would I have needed to be told in order to believe in myself so that I can go out and carry out my day the best of my ability?
Right.
And so I put myself in your shoes. And again, it's not about me. Because when you make it about yourself, you talk about how good you are. I don't want to talk about how good I am. I want to talk about how good you are and how good you can be. And I want you to be better as a result of them knowing me.
Right.
Because just be honest, most people will never remember what you say, but they will always remember how you made them feel.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So where do you draw, kind of going into because you said you're kind of going into more like the leadership type realm of things. Is there any person or people, either in your professional life that you met in the military, or figures in history that you pull some of your leadership tactics, beliefs, standards, whatever you want to call it, from?
Yeah, I would say I have a few people that I listen to. It was John Maxwell for a long time, and then the president of John Maxwell, who was Paul Martinelli, who's he was a guy kind of similar upbringing, grew up in a really bad home. He was a janitor. He created a multi-million-dollar cleaning company. Then he became the president of John Maxwell team, and he's very big on mindset and stuff like that. But I had to start thinking about, okay, when do you stop listening to other people's life and their story and start looking at your own? And instead of reading more books, start writing a book of your own life. And so that's what I'm working on now, is like looking at my life and my journey and what are those lessons that I've learned. I think that the content of your life right now is the curriculum for your development. And everybody always asks, like, what's the book you recommend? And I always say yours, because no matter where you're at right now, it's a perfect place to be to grow into who you need to become. As shitty as your life is or as great it is, there's always lessons to be learned. And if you go read somebody else's book, yeah, you're going to be inspired by their journey.
Right.
You don't want to look at somebody else's life and see how they did it. You need to figure out how you're going to do it, because there's never the way to do something. There's always a way. And when we're looking for that golden nugget or that shiny object where people are like, oh, do this and you're going to get that. I'll tell you that it's not always the case. Because I can tell you how I did what I did, but your journey's going to be different because you have a different life than me. And so now it's like I'm listening to my own life story. I'm doing things like this, sharing it, because I can go back and listen to this and be like, man, that's something new. Because right now I'm speaking authentically from my true self. There's no script. There's no book. I'm not quoting a bunch of people.
Right.
And when I listen to it, I'm like, wow, I didn't even know that was in me. I just learned something new. Because what happens when we turn this off, we go back to our normal grind. Right. We're influenced by all the TV, the radio, the news, social media, and we start losing ourselves in the process. But times like this, where we're having this conversation, this authentic conversation, those nuggets come out from your subconscious mind. You're like, wow, I forgot about that.
Sure.
And so that's how you learn and really think about, okay, maybe I'm the one that I need to listen to. Right?
That's all. All right, sir. So we've been going almost an hour and a half.
Oh, wow.
Out of respect for your time and everything, just to kind of close it up, maybe we could do this again for sure someday. But kind of the last question, as we mentioned earlier, the military is a very different place than it was when you joined. What is some advice that you could give to young leaders like myself that you may see that we should carry with us to kind of lead this new unique generation of sailors?
Yeah, I often think about this quite a bit, actually, because you're right, it is different. A lot of people now with the mentality is, what's in it for me? And I think that, as a leader in today's military, we have to make sure that we are helping them see that it's not about you. that you have to be willing to live a life of service, understand that there will be sacrifice well before there's success. And that if you become a person of significance, right, that elusive target of success is no longer relevant. Because when you become significant in the life of those you lead, that significance is what breeds success. Because people will talk about you well after you're gone. What they say is determined by how you show up, by who you are, right? I want to leave a room and people say, man, that guy was good. I'm going to remember that. Not because of the bad or the ugly, but because of who he is. And so to lead in today's military, I think it's going to take more leaders to be more vulnerable, more compassionate, but also meet people on common ground. Share those struggles, because right now we got a lot of people coming to the military who are broken.
Right.
And before, when we came in, you got broken down.
Right.
And we don't need to break them down anymore. They're already broken. So our job now is to build them up, and we do that by building a bridge, by showing what's possible through our own life. Sharing those struggles, sharing our journey, and showing them what's possible. Because when we have this old mentality of we had, get the job done, don't ask any questions. You know, literally, getting broke down.
Right.
Now, that job's already been done for us by society. And now our job is to build them back up. And we do that by our character, by who we are, sharing those struggles more than the success. And help them see that there's a process. Everybody wants they see the end result, they see the glory, but they don't know the story.
Right.
And stuff like this, what you're doing with this podcast, is huge, because now you're seeing that no matter where you're at, everybody's a person. They're a real person, and they've had their own struggles. And that builds the hope that, hey, you know what, maybe I can do it too. But when there's no process involved and people want the end result, they become disappointed, right? The gap of disappointment lies between expectation and reality. Everybody has the expectation, I'm going to join the military and change my life. No, you're not.
Right.
Because we see people all the time. They come in, they do their time, they get out, and have nothing to show for it.
That's awesome, sir. I think that's a great note to leave it on, because that's that phrase that you just said, where we don't need to break them down. Society does it for us. We need to build them up. That's exactly what you said at that CQ, and that's what caught my attention. And that's something I still keep in mind to this day.